Hi, I'm Fortune senior writer Jen Wieczner. Some of the biggest questions over the past several months have been, who's going back to work in the brick and mortar office? What will the space look like? And can the office-based, remote, and hybrid teams coexist? One thing's for certain, the old status quo won't cut it. So let's bring in some folks in the know on workplace redesign. We have Cuningham Principal and Executive Director of Work, Nina Broadhurst, Heidrick Struggles Managing Partner Billy Dexter, Intuit Vice President and Chief Real Estate Officer Chris Glennon, and Steelcase President and CEO Jim Keane. Thank you all so much for being here. So, Nina, let's start with you, because one of the things when we were thinking about social distancing, which seems like it's going to be a reality of the office, whether it's a hybrid office, a 25% reduced capacity office, is that social distancing is going to still be important. But you've written that it's not all about adding space and making, in which many companies can't even afford to do, given their real estate constraints. So how do you think about creating that distance with furniture, with different tweaks about where people are sitting, while making sure people still have that kind of collaborative feeling?
Right. So I think that the return to office is going to be not all return to office. I think we're going to be doing a hybrid office. We'll be deciding which medium to use, whether to be in the office physically or digitally. And I think that's going to already start to talk about how we inhabit our space there. I think that everybody's dying to get back together and collaborate together. I think we're going to be looking at how to redistribute space in the office. We're going to look at having probably less desk space and how we space out desks. But we're also going to be looking at the collaboration space that's probably going to grow in the office. It's going to probably take up a little more real estate than before. And then I think the one other thing that the office is really going to ask for is some focus space, some people who can't do the focus at home. And I think we're going to be looking at organizations that are starting to look at how they do meaningful work, how they organize their work based on what they do and what's best for what they do, and find a balance between the digital and the physical presence in the office.
Do you think the open office plan is dead, so to speak?
I don't know that it's dead, but I think we've been kind of living in a one size fits all world right now. And I think what we're going to start to see is people are going to start to look at what type of work they do, the kind of interactions they need to have, the kind of organization they have, and decide what the physical space really has to do for them. What the most important thing that they can do with the physical space is. I think a lot of people are thinking it's the interactions that they're looking for. So to some degree, that might mean a reduction in the number of big, wide, open space offices. I think it's going to change the dynamic of what we put in that physical space.
Yeah, I also want to talk about that importance of collaboration and with Billy, because Billy, Heidrick Struggles has done something interesting where you are actually working from home permanently, and your Willis Tower offices in Chicago are not a place that you're going to have to go day to day. We're talking about family life at home, but does that replace the kind of collaboration interaction with your colleagues, or how do you recreate that in this kind of permanent work from home or hybrid setting?
Well, thank you, Jen. We had to reimagine the whole home office virtualness. We always had some of that, but going to it permanently for our partner population was a real adjustment. We only had one home office in our home, so my wife got that. So I had to convert a living room that wasn't used very much to a home office, and so figuring out how to make that work. Surprisingly, we have become a lot more efficient in terms of I don't have the hour commute anymore. I'm able to just really walk downstairs and get plugged in. I have a lot more interaction, interestingly enough, with my colleagues through our, regular Zoom calls and coffee catch-ups and virtual happy hours. And then with our clients, everybody's, kind of stationary. So we're actually getting more time with them and have figured out how to become very efficient versus having to get on if any of you have done a 6 a.m. flight, flying to New York or LA, and that means you're out the door by 4, you're up at 2 or 3. So it's actually worked out well. And we've learned we've been in it for a year. Now the drawback of this will be, how does it impact our culture? So far, so good. We're staying connected. We're over indexing on, having virtual meetings and speakers and conferences to try and keep our culture intact. But we have made the adjustment, and we've reduced our office size down to 25%. So we can still go in if we need to and use a office for the day or a conference room. But we've made a lot of adjustments to make it work. And so far, so good.
Great. Thank you. Chris, I wanted to ask you, about your experience at Intuit, where you've actually reopened offices, closed them later, and are now thinking about reopening some again. And one of the lessons you mentioned that you learned along this process was just how much employees don't always like the restrictions, and the limitations that working during the pandemic require. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you're thinking about, potentially, going back to work without masks eventually?
I think this is going to be an evolution. Clearly, it already has been. And one of the things we've learned over the last year is that, we can take a lot of great insights and forecast what we think will happen. It's not always timed out that way. But I think what we're really focused on is flexibility. We want to keep adapting. We are going to be embracing a hybrid environment as well. And it's that combination of flexibility, what will adapt in the way people want to work, the behaviors of teams, the form-follow function of what do these teams need when they're in the office by way of high-impact collaboration spaces. We have a population of engineers. We're a platform company. So how do those engineers need to work? And sometimes they need to collaborate, and in the same day they need heads down, focused areas. So how will we support that? And what technologies need to adapt for that as well? So again, I think it's this interesting mix of all of it, and clearly coming back with limitations is difficult. And so, we're spread around the world. We've got 10,000 employees. And, managing what's happening in each geography with regulations, and all of that's going to continue to evolve and adjust in the coming months. And so, we want to find the right, safe, thoughtful ways to bring people back, but also make sure we're maintaining the culture of connectedness and innovation that drives our business.
You mentioned in Israel specifically that you're thinking about, potentially not requiring masks anymore. What kind of, what would require to be? Yeah.
Well, I think we're looking at a whole variety of things. Israel at the moment has done a fantastic job with vaccinations as a country. They are leading the world in that area. So what's possible as a result of that, where in other countries where we have folks, it's a much slower ramp up to the vaccination. So we're trying to understand what all these different things look like, both at scale across the enterprise, and then what local things might change differently. The teams in Israel are highly collaborative. They are highly social. They want to come together. Are we going to be able to allow that? And if so, with what restrictions? So we're trying to, again, find the balance point. I think the next 6 months are going to be tons of learnings and adapting and adjusting.
Great, thanks. Jim, moving on to you, one of the things I've been reading about was just the demand for Steelcase products such as, plexiglass dividers had soared, in the past few months during the pandemic. But is that going to be the future of office design, or, what kind of new furniture items do you anticipate seeing in the office post-pandemic?
Yeah, thanks. So I think a lot of the demand for screens was more of an immediate demand when people were thinking about what to do last summer. So they were thinking about coming back kind of between the waves. Now, as we talk with clients, they're looking for more permanent solutions. And as Nina mentioned, there's a lot of focus on private spaces. How do we find spaces where people can focus? The office has to be able to compete with the home office. So products that are individual workstations that create more natural division and separation for people, but also pods, small freestanding architectural solutions. You can go in and close a door. Maybe those spaces are available on demand. We're also seeing increasing demand for flexible collaboration furniture. So straight up meetings, the meetings you used to hold in a conference room can easily be done on Zoom or Teams, but there's more demand now for rooms in which people do actual work when they're together, brainstorming, using whiteboards, problem solving, doing design thinking. Spaces like that are quite different and require different kinds of furniture. And that's where we're seeing the demand rise right now.
Yeah, thanks. One of the other things I want to talk about is inclusivity and making the office a place where people feel included when they return. And that comes in a lot of different forms. But I want to ask Billy, since Billy, you specialize in recruiting diverse leaders as part of your job at Heidrick Struggles. And I just wonder, are there any lessons that you've been able to glean so far, just in terms of, how do you promote diversity and inclusion in the office? What might we do better when we all go back, or have a hybrid situation like you've described?
Well, I think it's important that two things, that the new office culture is going to demand as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And a big part of that is in the past, we've talked about a process and things that we aspire to do within our organization. I think now, after the social unrest from the summer, and as we're going into 2021, employees are going to demand change. They want to see actual progress. They want to see things be different. So, and I think each organization's got to determine what that is. One of the best ways of doing that, and a lot of organizations have employee resource groups. I think that the importance of these ERGs is going to be even more critical now. And they represent different segments of the employee population, supporting them, giving them budget, supporting some of the programming, recognizing and embracing diversity. I like to say organizations need to learn how to embrace diversity and practice inclusion. And what does that mean? I think employees are not going to, just stand for the same old. They really want to see progress, and they want to see engagement as it relates to diversity and inclusion.
That's a great point. We only have a little bit of time left, but I also wanted to ask you, Nina, how you're thinking about promoting inclusion in offices going forward.
Well, I think I really agree with what you just said. In a way of sort of culture and policy, but I also think there's other things that we are missing, or maybe just haven't realized the power of, which is things like flexible schedule or flexible place, which allow for inclusion. People who couldn't necessarily attend something can attend it from afar if it's digital, or perhaps their schedule doesn't allow them to come or be a part of something. If we allow for a flexible schedule, they also have the opportunity to join in. I think also digital, we have to be careful. We have to make sure that there's an equity when people are digital versus in physical presence. I think technology is going to evolve to get us there. We just need to get it to evolve and get us part together, all equal in the same space, whether it's digital or physical.
All great points. As everyone knows, the office clearly has an impact on retaining talent and recruiting. So thank you all so much for your time. This has been a great conversation.